There's a Victorian home 3 blocks from a public beach on Lake Huron in a downtown that has actually won a National Historic Preservation Award. In a city that shoots off one of the largest fireworks displays in the entire country every single summer. And the going price for a home like it is barely 6 figures. Not a typo, not a fixer-upper trick. Not some half-collapsed shell of a house with no roof. A real livable home in a real American town with a real main street, for less than what a lot of people put down as a deposit in most of this country right now. Today we're counting down 10 towns across Michigan where home prices are still sitting under $120,000 in 2026. And by the time we reach the town sitting at the very top of this list, the one that opened this video, you're going to understand exactly how a place this beautiful managed to stay this affordable. Here's the deal I want to make with you before we start, because it's the reason this channel exists in the first place. Every town on this list is real. Every price is something I actually dug up, cross-checked against multiple sources, and confirmed before it went into this script, not a number I pulled out of thin air to make a thumbnail look good. And every single one of these places has a catch. Some of them have a small one. Some of them have a big one. But affordable towns do not stay affordable by accident. There is almost always a reason prices sit this low, and if a channel won't tell you the reason, it isn't doing you any favors, and it isn't really trying to help you make a decision, it's just trying to keep you watching. So we're going to look at the beauty and the bargain here, and we're going to look just as hard every single time at the trade-off underneath it. That's the whole point of what we do. Before we get into the list, if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe because we do exactly this kind of deep dive every week for a different state or region. And I would genuinely love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your state or even your hometown in the comments below. It helps me understand who's actually out here looking for a way out of an expensive market, and it shapes which towns and which states we cover next. One more thing before we start counting down. Michigan as a whole is not a cheap state anymore. The statewide median home price has climbed well past $250,000 over the last couple of years, driven by the same nationwide pressure that's pushed buyers out of coastal metros and into the Midwest looking for something they can actually afford. That statewide number is exactly why the 10 towns on this list stand out the way they do. Every single one of them is sitting at less than half the state average, and several are sitting at less than a third of it. And none of that happened because these towns are secretly terrible places nobody wants to live. It happened because of population shifts, industrial decline, and geography, and we're going to walk through all of it honestly, town by town. All right, let's start the countdown. Number 10 is Saginaw, a riverfront city of roughly 44,000 people sitting along the Saginaw River in what locals call the Great Lakes Bay region, about 90 miles northwest of Detroit, and a short drive from Midland and Bay City. Home prices here land right around $119,000, which puts Saginaw just barely under our cutoff for this list. What you get for that price is genuine river access and a surprising density of culture for a city this size. Ojibwe Island sits right in the middle of the Saginaw River downtown, a walkable park connected by bridges, with the Japanese Cultural Center and tea house just next to it, an actual 3-acre garden and authentic tea house built without a single nail, grown out of a sister city friendship with Tokushima, Japan, that goes back to 1961. Add in the Castle Museum, the Saginaw Art Museum, the historic Temple Theater downtown, and Saginaw Valley State University just outside the city, and you've got more going on culturally than a lot of towns twice this size. The catch is population loss. Saginaw has shrunk significantly since its manufacturing heyday, and that decline has left some neighborhoods with real vacancy and safety concerns you'd want to research block by block before you buy. It isn't uniform across the city, and that unevenness is exactly why Saginaw is sitting at number 10 instead of higher up this list. Number 9 is Pontiac, a city of about 60,000 people in Oakland County, roughly 25 miles northwest of Detroit. This is the literal birthplace of the Pontiac automobile brand, and the automotive fingerprints are everywhere if you know where to look. From old factory buildings to a downtown that was built around the wealth General Motors once poured into this city. Homes here are trading in the mid-100,000s, and you're getting proximity to Oakland County's much stronger job market and shopping corridors, along with a downtown entertainment scene anchored by venues like the historic Crowfoot, a converted early 20th century building that now hosts touring bands and has become a genuine draw for people well outside Pontiac itself. The honest catch here is that Pontiac's downtown core still carries visible scars from decades of industrial decline. There's real investment happening, new residents, new businesses opening on blocks that sat empty for years. But buyers should expect a patchwork city, with some streets fully revitalized and others still waiting their turn, rather than a uniformly polished downtown. Number 8 takes us somewhere a lot colder and a lot more remote. Ironwood sits at the far western edge of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, just 18 miles south of Lake Superior, with a population of around 5,000 people. This is genuinely a different Michigan than the rest of this list. Home values here run anywhere from the mid-70,000s up toward $120. 000 depending on the source and the season. And what you're buying into is ski country. Big Powderhorn and Snow River resorts are both right here, along with the Aber Nordic Center for cross-country skiers. The Iron Bell Trail, which starts in Ironwood and eventually runs over 2,000 miles to Detroit. And a genuinely strange local landmark in the 52-foot fiberglass statue known as the world's tallest Indian, built to honor the Ojibwe leader Hiawatha. It's the kind of small, outdoorsy town that quietly draws retirees looking for a slower, snowier second act. People who come up from Chicago or Milwaukee for a weekend and never really leave. The catch is real isolation. Winters here are long and heavy with lake-effect snow off Superior. The nearest larger city is well over an hour away. And healthcare access and job options are limited in a way that's simply built into living this far from anywhere. Number 7 is Flint, a city of about 80,000 people, some 66 miles northwest of Detroit. I want to be careful and fair here, because Flint's name carries a lot of weight for one very specific reason. The lead-contaminated water crisis that unfolded through the mid-2010s. That history is real. It caused real and lasting harm to families here, and I'm not going to gloss over it or pretend it didn't happen. The city has spent years since then replacing lead service lines across Flint and rebuilding public trust that was badly broken. What often gets lost in that headline, though, is that Flint also has some of the lowest home prices per square foot anywhere in the country, with median values well under $70,000, alongside real cultural assets that a lot of people don't expect, including the Flint Institute of Arts and the broader Flint Cultural Center campus, home to a planetarium and a well-regarded local history and science museum. If you're seriously considering Flint, do your homework on the specific neighborhood and the water infrastructure status for that specific address. The citywide replacement work has made major, verifiable progress. But due diligence here isn't optional, it's the price of admission. Beyond the water story, Flint is also a city that's been shrinking for decades as the auto industry that built it pulled jobs elsewhere. And that decline shows up in visible ways, from vacant lots to stretches of struggling commercial strips. Anyone drawn in purely by the price needs to walk the actual streets, talk to actual residents, and understand which pockets of the city are genuinely stabilizing before they buy. Because Flint is not a uniform experience from one neighborhood to the next. Number 6 is Muskegon Heights, a small city of around 10,000 people tucked right next to the larger city of Muskegon on Michigan's west side, just a few miles from the Lake Michigan shoreline and about 40 miles from Grand Rapids. Home prices here sit comfortably in the $70,000 to $100,000 range depending on the source and the season. The appeal is proximity. You're minutes away from Muskegon's beaches, its marina district, and a growing arts and dining scene, without paying anywhere close to lakefront prices, because Muskegon Heights itself sits a little inland from the water. The honest catch is that Muskegon Heights is its own separate, smaller municipality, distinct from Muskegon proper, with a notably higher poverty rate and more strained city services than its larger neighbor next door. The lake is close. The town itself is still working through real, ongoing economic challenges that show up in the school system and in the local job market. Number 5 is Inkster, a city of roughly 24,000 people about 15 miles west of Detroit, close enough to Detroit Metro Airport and the Dearborn Job Corridor that a lot of residents commute to work in under half an hour. Homes here run around $87,000, which makes Inkster one of the more affordable commuter-friendly spots on this entire list. You're within easy reach of Detroit and Dearborn employers, including the massive Ford footprint in Dearborn, without paying Detroit or Dearborn housing prices for the privilege. The trade-off is an older housing stock that often needs meaningful updating before move-in, and a crime rate that runs higher than the county average in parts of the city. This is the kind of place that rewards a buyer who does careful, street-by-street research rather than judging the whole city off a single headline or a single zip code average. Number 4 is Ecorse, a Detroit river town of about 9,200 people, roughly 10 miles south of Detroit, right in the heart of what locals call the downriver area. Home prices sit in the $65,000 to $80,000 range across multiple sources, making it one of the more consistently affordable towns on this list. Ecorse has deep industrial roots as a shipbuilding and steel town. This was once home to major shipyards that built vessels for the Great Lakes, and even with that industry mostly gone now, the town still has that tight, small, walkable feel, with genuine river access along the Detroit River. The honest catch is that same industrial legacy. Decades of heavy manufacturing left environmental concerns in parts of the community that any serious buyer should look into before purchasing. And the population has fallen substantially from its mid-century peak, which shows up today in a fairly limited local retail and dining scene compared to what the town once had. We're now about halfway through this list, and if you're finding this kind of research useful, that's really the entire reason this channel exists, to surface the towns that never show up in glossy tourism ads or polished real estate listings. Because there's simply no advertising budget behind a place like Ecorse or Muskegon Heights, the way there is for a beach town in Florida. Subscribing costs you absolutely nothing, and it's genuinely the only signal that tells me to keep digging into places like these instead of chasing whatever's trending. If that's useful to you, it would mean a lot. Number 3 is Highland Park, a small city of under 9,000 people that sits entirely surrounded by the city of Detroit, like an island inside it. Home prices here are strikingly low, generally sitting in the $60,000 to $85,000 range across the sources I checked, and the history packed into a town this size is genuinely enormous. This is where Henry Ford built the plant that introduced the moving assembly line to the entire world, a turning point in industrial history that changed how nearly everything gets manufactured on the planet. And that original plant still stands as a recognized historic landmark. Highland Park was also home to Chrysler's corporate headquarters for decades before the company eventually moved on. Today, your steps from Detroit's New Center District and the Woodward Corridor, with easy access into the bigger city's museums, restaurants, and job market. The catch here is serious, and I want to be direct about it. Highland Park has struggled financially for years, at one point even losing streetlights across large parts of the city after falling behind on utility bills, and poverty rates here remain among the highest in the state of Michigan. This is a town with an outsized historical legacy and an undersized tax base to match it. And any buyer needs to walk in with clear eyes about what that means for city services. Number 2 is River Rouge, another downriver Detroit suburb, home to roughly 7,000 people about 9 miles south of the city, sitting directly on the Detroit River. Home prices here have ranged from the mid-50,000s up to around $105,000 for recent sales, depending on the exact source and time frame, which makes River Rouge one of the most affordable towns in this entire state. Not just on this list. Belanger Park is the real centerpiece here, a riverfront park with a working lighthouse, a paved walking path, picnic pavilions, and a waterfront gazebo that gives this small, historically industrial town a genuinely scenic anchor most visitors don't expect to find. There's also a small but real economic uptick tied to the cannabis dispensary industry that's moved into the city since Michigan legalized recreational sales, bringing new foot traffic and tax revenue into a town that badly needed both. The catch is one that echoes across a lot of this list, a long industrial past along the waterfront, meaning some pollution legacy that buyers should look into, and a small population base that limits how much the city can invest in services and infrastructure without outside help. And that brings us, finally, to number 1, the town that opened this entire video. Bay City sits right at the top of Saginaw Bay, exactly where the Saginaw River empties into Lake Huron, about 110 miles north of Detroit. It's home to just under 33,000 people, and honestly, it might be the single best combination of beauty, history, and real affordability on this entire list. The median home price here lands right around $103,000. For that, you are getting a genuinely gorgeous historic downtown, one that has actually won the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Great American Main Street Award. Filled with Victorian-era commercial buildings and mansions built by 19th-century lumber barons back when Bay City was one of the wealthiest lumber towns in the entire country. You're a short walk from the Riverwalk along the Saginaw River, close to Bay City State Park and its beach on Saginaw Bay, and the Midland Street Historic District gives the whole town a second, walkable strip of shops, pubs, and bistros beyond just downtown. And then there's the fireworks. Every year around the 4th of July, Bay City puts on a 3-day fireworks festival along the Saginaw River that draws an estimated 300,000 people, with shells launched from both banks of the river and shows choreographed to music. Widely recognized as one of the largest fireworks displays anywhere in the country. There's a community college and a state university nearby providing steady local jobs, a General Motors powertrain plant still operating in the area, and a downtown that genuinely feels alive rather than hollowed out. The kind of place where you can picture actually building a life rather than just passing through. The catch, because there's always one. Even at number 1, Bay City has lost a lot of the heavy manufacturing base that originally built those lumber baron mansions. And while the city has held on noticeably better than a lot of its Rust Belt peers across the state, wages here still run below the state average. And winters off Saginaw Bay are long, gray, and genuinely cold for a good chunk of the year. This isn't a town pretending to be something it isn't. It's an honest trade, real history, real water access, and real community pride. In exchange for a slower local economy and a climate that simply isn't for everyone. So that's the list. 10 Michigan towns, 10 very different stories, and one thing tying every single one of them together. None of them stayed this affordable by accident. Every one of these places lost population, lost factories, lost tax base over the decades, or simply sits far enough off the beaten path that outside demand never caught up to what's actually here. That's not some hidden trick or a loophole in the housing market. It's the honest, unglamorous mechanism behind almost every genuinely affordable town left in America. And it means the trade-offs sitting next to these prices are just as real as the savings themselves. People choose towns like these for all kinds of reasons. A retirement check that finally stretches twice as far as it did back home. A first house that doesn't come with a 30-year wait hanging around your neck before you've even turned 30. A slower pace of life near water or woods or a downtown you can actually walk, in places that coastal cities priced people out of years ago. Some people move here to be closer to aging parents without taking on a second mortgage just to do it. Others are simply tired of handing half their paycheck to a landlord in a city where owning anything feels like a fantasy. None of that makes the catches on this list disappear, and none of it should. Every one of these towns is going to ask something of the people who move there. Whether that's patience with city services, tolerance for a long winter, or the willingness to be part of rebuilding something rather than just buying into something finished. It just means that some people, after weighing all of that honestly, decide the trade is worth it for the life they actually want to live. Only you can decide whether it's worth it for you. And that decision deserves the full picture, not just the highlight reel. So tell me, which one of these 10 would you actually consider moving to, and why? Would it be the water access in Bay City or River Rouge? The quiet and the snow in Ironwood, or the sheer value sitting in a place like Highland Park or Ecorse? And if you're from Saginaw, Bay City, Pontiac, Ironwood, or any of these other 9 towns, drop a comment and tell us what we missed, because nobody knows a place better than the people who actually live there day to day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.